What is good, guys? Welcome back to the channel. And today's topic will be how do you journal properly and how do we use that data to refine our system over time and become more consistent and overall a better trader. I would say let's get straight into it. As you can see here now, I have opened up my journal, which I used on Notion since, pretty much beginning of June all the way down to the last trade I have taken as of now. And each of those metrics which I journal, I will explain you guys what you want to look at and what it comes down to and which insights you can get from those. Now that's the template. In this one, there are some more metrics to look at. I will also explain those ones. But for my system, they are no longer important since I already have made my decisions on those things. And therefore, I don't have to keep journaling those anymore. But for you, this might be different since you maybe are a beginner or you are not as far in your journey as me, right? But back to the journal. And I would say we will go through each metric one by one, and I will show you exactly what I look at and how I use that to refine my system with small iterations over time. Now, before we get into the first metric, your journal is your best friend as a trader. It tells you exactly what works, what doesn't work, what you should double down on, what you should remove from your system, and what works sometimes good, sometimes bad. And all of those information, those small nuances, they can make such a large difference in your trading over a long time. Like I have seen in my students and also in my case, some small changes which you usually would not even think about, they can make such a large difference in your monthly P&L, yearly P&L, or even in your weekly P&L. Because if those insights help you to remove some certain losses you keep taking, then this can drastically improve your P&L and your performance over time. But in order to journal effectively, you need to have a system. You can't journal random trades if you don't have a system, because you don't know what to tweak if you don't have a system and know which screw to turn. You have to imagine if you drive a car and it's broken down, you know exactly which part to fix. But if you don't even have a defined car, so you just drive imaginary, this can be, I don't know, an elephant with large purple ears, whatever, you don't even know what to look at. So you need to have a car, in this case your system, which you know exactly what you want to see, what is your setup, and then you can journal and refine over time. And that's where most people fail, especially people trading discretionary price action. They oftentimes just trade whatever looks good. They don't have a system. They just trade, looks good, looks bad, looks like a sell, looks like a buy, whatever, and they trade. But that's not a system. You need to have some sort of rule-based execution which allows you to collect data. So that's the first step. You need to have one system. In my case, that's the 4-step protocol. And then once you have that system, you can set up those metrics, then journal. And then over time, you can optimize small changes in your system. Then once you have that system, you also have to submit some time to actually execute a system over multiple months. You can't backtest trades because backtesting and live executing are two complete different things. So backtested trades don't work. You need to actually have taken those trades, or maybe it was a missed trade. Those ones you also are supposed to journal. And then you can work with that data. Backtested trades don't count. So that's also where most people fail. They're not able to submit a few months of time to journal one system, knowing well aware that they might not make money straight away, because you need to have that patience to collect data and then refine your system. But let's stop the yapping and get straight into the first metric, which is the day. Why is this important? You want to know on what days of the week and also what week of the month you have taken a trade, right? You can see now in this case I have 22 trades, which is still not enough. You need at least 40, 50 trades over 3 months, 4 months, some longer period amount of time, and you have a decent sample size, because you can't make adaptations to your system based off of one trade or 2 trades. Now, what you want to do here is you want to collect data. First of all, the trade frequency. What weeks of the month do you have the most setups? In the first week, second week, third week, fourth week? Then also during what weekdays? Do you have most of your trades on Mondays, Thursdays, whatever it might be? Then the next step is you want to calculate your win rate on those days. meaning how high is your win rate on the first week of the month, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, and also within those weekdays. Do you have your most wins on a Wednesday or Thursday? At the same time, where do you have your most losses? For example, I found out the first week of the month is usually where I have the lowest win rate of all my weeks. Might sound like a small detail, but now since I know my win rate is the lowest in the first week of the month compared to the second, the third, or the last one, I am even more selective with my setups in the first week, or I reduce my risk, which helps me to become more consistent because I take less losses because I am more selective with my setups. That's just one example. For you, it might be the last week of the month or the second one, I don't know. Or maybe you have the same win rate across all weeks during the month, then you don't have to do any adaptations like that. And again, the same thing you do with the weekday. For example, I found out I have my highest win rate on Wednesday and Thursday. So I know those days are the ones where I perform the best. Why? I don't know. Maybe because I have more information from Monday to Tuesday to get an idea of how the weekly candle will shape. But also, I don't care about that. I just know I perform the best on those days. And then on those days, I know I should be present on the chart because those days are where I make the most amount of profits. And also, another thing you want to keep in mind, what news events do we have on those days and weeks? For example, NFP is always in the first week of the month. Then we have CPI, we have FOMC, and all the other red folder news events, unemployment claims, PMI, and so on. Same thing here. You can journal, how do I perform on those news events? Do I have a higher win rate on New York session with PMI or unemployment claims compared to another news event? Again, small details. If you compound those small details over all of those metrics, you will have a large compound effect of those small nuances you adapt over time. Then the next metric is the asset. Right? For example, if you trade all majors, exotics, commodities, gold, whatever it might be, you want to journal your win rate and your frequency on those setups. Which pairs give you the most setups and the most wins? What is your win rate on euro compared to pound, UCAD, gold, for example, whatever it might be. And then if you find out, for example, you watch one certain pair, for example, USD Swiss franc, you watch that pair every day, but you only have a setup like once a month or every 2 months. And then also if the win rate on that pair is lower than other ones, you can say, okay, this pair has such a high opportunity cost of the time you have to watch the pair compared to what actually makes me in profits. It might be worth to cut out that time because you have to keep in mind your mental capital, how much time you allocate to watch this pair, to trading it. And if you say that's not worth my time or my mental capital, then just cut it out. For me, for example, I figured out on euro, I have the most amount of setups and I also have the highest win rate. So euro is my main pair. That's why I'm always watching euro. And then the other pairs next, pound, UJ, UCAD, and so on. And I decided, for example, pairs like Swissy or exotics, I do watch them, but only on the H1, and they only take a setup if it's really high probability, and I don't watch them on a daily basis. So calculate your win rate and trade frequency, figure out the ones with the highest win rate and the most amount of setups, and then prioritize those, and think about cutting out the other ones or removing your chart time. Then the next 3 metrics are the daily chart, the hourly chart, and the entry chart. So those ones are more like qualitative metrics, meaning you have to take a look at them. And what I do here is if I have a decent amount of trades, I open all of those daily charts, I go through them, open them in a new tab, and I just compare. I keep in mind, was it a win, partial loss, break even, whatever it might be the trade outcome. I then take a look at all my winning trades and take a look at the daily chart. How did the daily chart look on that day or day before compared to how did the daily chart look on a losing trade? And if I can see, okay, the daily chart always looks quite similar, the framework. For example, do we have a value gap on daily time frame? Do we have higher time frame bullish order flow or bearish order flow? Do we have low resistance liquidity with high resistance? What PT area in the daily time frame is visible? And I try to train my pattern recognition on how does the daily chart look if it's a winning trade compared to how does the daily look on a losing trade. For example, was the daily maybe a bit indecisive on that day? Is there anything I can spot? And the same thing I'm doing on the hourly. I open the hourly chart and take a look. What are the common things I can see on the hourly time frame which then lead to a win or a loss? And if I can find, for example, the hourly chart, if it looks like there's a certain pattern which is repeating itself or multiple losses, and I can then identify that in the live market, and then I know, okay, I might should not take a trade or be more selective with my entry, because I know if the hourly chart looks like that or the daily chart, it tends to be a loss. Then the next metric is the session. You want to always track the session. What session have you traded? And same thing here. What's the trade frequency? Where do you have your most setups? Is it New York, London, London close, Asia, or maybe you ended some swing trades out of session like here? And same thing here. Calculate your win rate based on the session. Which sessions have the highest win rate? Well, if you see your win rate in New York is 60% and London session is maybe only 40%, then you might can consider to cut out London session or to reduce your risk, implement maybe some double confirmations, and simply by then cutting out the London session or the Asian session, whatever it might be, and only focusing on that session where you perform the best, you can get your entire win rate from 50 to 60. Because if you now only trade New York session, you should have a win rate of 60% instead of 50%, for example. And also you can compare how much profit do you make in each session. Like if you have, let's say you make like, I don't know, 10K profits over all of those trades, how much of those profits came from New York session, London session, and so on. And if you see, for example, 70% of my profits come from New York session, then it might be not even worth watching Asia, London, and so on. Just save your mental capital for each New York session and only focus on that session. Because if you can assess all of your mental capital to one session instead of spreading it to 5 sessions or 4 sessions each day, you will be much more focused. Your outcomes might be even better in New York session. Then the next one is a trade type. That's again depending on your system. My system, I have mainly 3 trade types. I have intra-session, intraday, and swing trades. Intra-session trades are sessions which I enter and exit within the same session. They are mainly based around the hourly chart as my bias. So I use the previous 2 sessions to create a narrative. For example, I aim for a session high from a session low and vice versa. And intraday trades always based on a daily expansion. So I use in this case the daily bias as my bias chart time frame. And then I try to catch the daily range, so the daily expansion profile. And finally, the last one is swing. That's mainly when I use the weekly, H4, hourly, and I enter trades on the hourly. I try to trade a one-shot, one-kill setup where I try to frame the main weekly move of the week. And same thing here. You want to calculate how do I perform the best? Do I perform better on swing trades, intra-session trades, intraday trades, or for example, combinations? Sometimes you have an intraday trade, and then in alignment with that idea, you have an intra-session trade. For example, you have a classic buy day, and you enter a long in London session, and then you have an intra-session trade in New York session as an intra-session trade based on that idea on the daily time frame. So you have your intraday entry in London, and then intra-session entry in New York session. And if you see, for example, the intra-session trades in New York, which are based on an intraday trade, which you entered before, and they have a much higher win rate than if you enter an intra-session trade without already having an intraday trade in play, and they have a much higher win rate, then you know if I enter an intra-session trade, but there's no trade already in play, then it's lower probability. The next one is the setup. That's pretty much based on my session profiles. I have mainly 6 session profiles, and it's pretty much, as you can see, London reversal, continuation, and the same thing for New York session and London close. So each trade has an idea behind, is it based on a continuation or a reversal combined with the session? And same thing here, you want to calculate your win rate on each profile. For example, in my case, I have the highest win rate on New York continuation. And you can see here, most of my setups are New York continuation, because that's where I know I have the highest win rate. So I try to only focus mainly on those setups compared to, for example, London reversal. Then the next one is direction. Here you want to compare the direction of the trade to the daily time frame. For example, if the daily is bullish and you short it, or the other way around, you want to compare how do your trades perform if you trade against the daily order flow or against the hourly order flow. All of those things you want to be aware of. So you know, for example, if your win rate is way higher when trading with the overall trend, then you should focus on doing that and avoiding trading against the trend, for example. Then the next one is the entry PD array. So what entry PD array or which combination of entry PD arrays did I use to enter proportion block, order block, inverse value gap, or a combination of multiple PD arrays? And then same thing here. What performs the best? Can I, for example, identify the combination of proportion block plus BPR having a much higher win rate than, for example, only entering based on a fair value gap? If you know that a certain combination of PD arrays as your entry model has the highest win rate, this can give you a massive edge when taking lower time frame trades. Because you know, if I see a proportion block with a BPR, I have a 90% win rate on that combination, then that's a massive edge, and you can say, okay, on this setup I might risk a bit more than on a usual setup. Same with entry type. That's really important if you often miss trades. For example, if you have your confirmation and then you wait for a limit entry and you oftentimes see you don't get an entry because price is reversing. You want to reverse engineer those trades and how you could have caught that setup. Maybe you should have entered a bit earlier. Maybe you should have used a lower or higher PD array to frame your entry based off. Is there anything which you can optimize in your missed trade so the next time you don't miss the trade, you actually get into a trade and the trade doesn't run without you into your TP? Next one is the realized risk reward versus the maximum risk reward. So the realized risk reward is what you actually booked, how much profits you actually locked in on that trade. And then the next one is what you could have gotten out if you would have closed at a perfect high or the perfect low of the trade before it reversed back to your entry. Obviously, that's not possible, but it gives you a really important insight. If you see, for example, most of your trades always run to at least 1R, as you can see here, 3.2, 1, 1.8, and so on, 5.6, blah, blah, blah. And you see, oftentimes you aim for 3R at your first TP, and price is reversing most times at 2 point something R. So you always get stop break even without making profits. Then this tells you you might should TP earlier, right? So you always take TP at 2R because you know most trades run to 2R at least and then they reverse. Or maybe it's at 3R. But at the same time, you always have to calculate what would be your win rate and your break even rate. Because if you aim for higher risk reward, your win rate will also decrease. If you go for a lower risk reward, your win rate will increase. But at the same time, you also need that higher win rate to be profitable over a longer time. Meaning you have to find the balance between having a decent risk reward, which at the same time keeps up your win rate. What is the optimum between a high win rate and the highest risk reward compared to the win rate? Next one, quite simple, trade result, win, partial loss, break even, all of those trade outcomes, quite obvious. Next one is the pips, right? So you want to see, okay, how many pips do you usually get on a trade based on what trade type? So you know, okay, usually I can get on intra-session trades around 20 pips, on a swing trade around 50 pips. You want to know how much of an expansion they usually get on a certain trade. Same for the time position. How much time does it take for price to hit my TP or to hit my stop? And if you can see, for example, most of my winning trades always hit TP within like 5 hours, for example. And once it's crossing above 5 hours, it's usually being a loss. Then you know every time you have a trade which is running for longer than 5 hours, you might should move your stops to break even or close the trade early because you know the trade will most likely, based on my stats, be a loss or go back to my entry. The next one in my journal, again, there's some few more metrics in this one, which I will explain here as well, is the entry time. Again, that's correlating to the session, obviously. But if you can see, for example, within New York session, I have most of my wins, they appear around 2 p.m. European time. I figured out, for example, most of my winning trades in New York session, which is already my highest win rate session. Within that session, I know my best setups form around 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. European time. So that's the time window within New York session where I have the highest win rate. You see, if you put together all of those nuances which come together by analyzing that journal, by having multiple trades over time, you can always find some small refinements which you then can apply, collect again more data, and check if your results, your risk reward, your win rate, whatever it might be, is increasing or improving. And again, you analyze your journal. Did it actually help something? If yes, keep it. If no, don't do it anymore. Quite simple. Just small iterations over time. Now, let's go to the journal, the template. You can find the link to that in the Discord, in the library channel of the free section. And what I have here is pretty much what I told you. What I don't journal anymore, because I already know what's the optimal for me. So in this case, the metrics which are here is the delivery narrative, meaning is price moving in AMD, market maker sell model or buy model? And if it's a market maker buy or sell model, where do you enter? Do you enter at a low risk buy, low risk sell, first stage of reaccumulation, second stage of reaccumulation? And what is your win rate on what narrative? Do you perform better on the AMD, on a market maker sell model or buy model? And also, if the narrative is a market maker buy or sell model, what is the win rate within the different stages? Like, do you perform better at a reaccumulation, at a low risk buy, low risk sell? Oftentimes you'll find out entering at a low risk sell, low risk buy has a lower win rate than entering at the first stage or second stage, for example. Again, small nuance, but if you know you gotta wait for more confirmations at a low risk buy or low risk sell, that's an insanely valuable insight. Entry model. I've also made a video on that when I use the word entry model. I will show you the schematic quickly. There we go. Where are you supposed to enter according to the current phase of the market? Again, I've made a video on that in detail explaining all of those stages. So pretty much I have 3 types of entry: turtle soup, confirmation, and double confirmation. And you're also supposed to journal exactly what confirmation you've used with this one here. Double confirmation, single confirmation, or turtle soup. And then again, you want to link that to the narrative, right? For example, how does the low risk sell or buy perform combined with double confirmation or a normal confirmation? Or if you turtle soup, the low risk buy, low risk sell. And then again, you might figure out in a low risk buy, which is in a market maker buy model, in alignment with a higher time frame order flow, I can be more aggressive with the low risk buy. But if the market maker buy model is forming against a higher time frame bearish order flow, I might have to use a confirmation for the low risk buy because I'm trading against the overall bearish order flow. You see, you can get so many insights on that journal. You just have to journal all trades honestly with a system you can actually tweak. And then over time, you can see small iterations compounding. Then within a year, half a year, multiple months, you will see a massive difference in your trading. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and you could take something of value from that. If you want to sign up for the SEN Capital Discord for August, you got, by the time this video will drop, about 3 more days to sign up for August. So if you want to join the SEN Capital Discord server, you can find a link below. You can also read through all of those testimonials here and yeah, get a view on what we do inside here. And otherwise, I would appreciate a like and a comment, and see you guys in the next one.